and Europe. President Trump wants the barriers to come all the way down.
Some cases where countries are subsidizing industries, and that's not fair. So you go tariff-free, you go barrier-free, you go subsidy-free. That's the way you learned at the Wharton School of Finance. I mean, that would be the ultimate thing. Now, whether or not that works, but I did suggest it, and people were, I guess they're going to go back to the drawing board and check it out, right?
President Donald Trump speaking there. And eliminating tariffs entirely would completely change the system in place today. The U.S. charges tariffs of just 2.5% on cars coming into the United States. Compare that to Europe's 10% duty. But that flips around when we look at light trucks. The EU's tariff stays the same, 10%, but the U.S. charges 25%. And that dates back to the so-called chicken war in the 1960s, when the U.S. jacked up tariffs on European trucks in retaliation for EU levies on U.S. poultry. Joining me now is Arantxa Gonzalez, the Executive Director of the International Trade Center. Arantxa, thank you so much for being with us. So just want to get your take on this. What do you make of this idea that the EU is considering reportedly getting rid of car tariffs altogether? Is this a worthwhile way of solving the trade dispute, in your opinion?
Well, any solution that prevents countries from entering into tit-for-tat retaliatory measures and countermeasures is, in my view, worth exploring. This would not be anything new. This has been tested before. It's been tested for IT products. And the question is bringing around the table the critical mass of exporters of cars to come to a deal to eliminate tariffs on automobiles. This would be EU-US, of course. It would bring others, Japan, Mexico, Canada, China, around the table in a dialogue to resolve an issue that seems to be important to some trading partners.
So EU officials are sort of looking at the situation. They're trying to examine whether or not it's feasible to sort of have a situation with zero tariffs on either end. What sort of things are they looking at specifically to see whether this is going to actually be able to work?
Well, I think the key is to bring people around the table. This is not just an EU-US matter. If you have to solve tariffs on automobiles, you have to bring the main exporters of automobiles around the table. And of course, this is where the discussion has to start. It's a dialogue. You know, in a way, this shows that the answers to the problems we are facing on international trade have to be beyond simply national answers or unilateral answers. It requires a dialogue. It requires an international setting where those that are affected have a say, but also make a commitment to fix the problem.
So in terms of just looking at Donald Trump's perspective, the EU currently, this is basically Donald Trump's perspective. The EU currently imposes 10% tariffs on imported passenger cars from the EU, from Europe rather, or from the US, and that compares to the US imposing 2.5% duty tariffs. Donald Trump says that that is hugely unfair. What do you make of his complaint?
Well, you see, when you negotiate a trade agreement, you don't exchange concessions for the same product in an identical manner. Because sometimes you don't export the same products that your competitor does. You see, the US has a tariff on 20% on trucks, and the EU doesn't have a 20% on trucks. They still trade on trucks. The negotiations between the EU and the US are made on global set of balance of concessions on both sides. The EU would be higher on some products, the US would be higher on some products, and vice versa. What matters at the end of the day is a balance where everybody finds offensives and defensives that they want to, in a way, protect or advance that allows them to sign the deal. That's what trade agreements are about. They are not about total victory or zero on any side, mostly because none of them can do a total zero on their side.
Yeah, that is one. You mentioned one argument that the EU had touched on, and that is, you know, Donald Trump's complaint ignores other tariffs that the U.S. has. So I spoke to the head of the WTO just yesterday, Roberto Azevedo, and he said to me that, you know, in the wake of, you know, these tariffs, these tit-for-tat tariffs happening between the U.S. and China, if there is a global all-out trade war, that the consequences, the economic consequences of that could be worse than the 2008 financial crisis. What do you make of those comments? Do you agree?
Well, what I am seeing already is the impact of these measures on the ground. I am also already seeing the impact of the measures that have been announced, not even taken, on workers in America. I have seen many companies saying, we will pull out of America, we will just simply lay off workers because we can't sustain the pressure of tariffs. I am seeing businesses not making capital investments in the US as a result of the uncertainty that these measures have created. But more importantly, tariffs are taxes. So what we are seeing is a potential for a massive tax increase that will be paid by consumers, will make consumers poorer, and will be to the detriment of the competitiveness of businesses. And this is where American businesses, in my view, need to be worried about these measures that are being imposed left, right, and center, because it will erode their competitiveness. And the whole purpose of reducing taxes on American business was precisely to render them more competitive. So we are going to see the opposite effect.
Yeah, many people say, listen, there are no winners at all if there is a trade war. Okay, Ms. Gonzalez, thank you so much. Appreciate that.